Okay, I think since there is at least a handful of us here on time, I'm one of those that I like to give a little time, but I also hate for people that are time to have to wait. So we're going to go ahead and get this kicked off. If some more people come on, that'd be great. And we'll just kind of fill them in as they show up. Thanks for coming today to our Combating Youth Vaping in Arizona presentation. There's a handful of staff here today. I'll just kind of go through briefly who's here and who will be talking. So Michelle, who you can see on screen, is our National Director for Tobacco Programs. She's a all-around tobacco guru and will be doing the majority of the talking today because she is intimately knowledgeable about these topics. Alyssa, our specialist, is here as well, currently off camera. She'll be working with a lot of the schools on the TA calls. Stacy Mortensen, our Western Division Vice President of Health Promotion, is kind of the captain of this group, leading the way, is also representing the state of Arizona, which is always nice. And then myself, Patrick Hadaway, I am the one that's been sending out the outreach to you guys, and hopefully it was easy enough to figure out how to get on this call today. So thanks everyone for being here. And Michelle, if you can go to the next screen. All right, so it looks like Daniel has already done half of this, but we'll have everybody else as well. If you could please in the chat share your name, what county health department you represent, your preferred email address and telephone number, and then also since today is National Cocoa Day, how do you like your hot chocolate?
I'm getting a Teams notification on mine that some people who are outside the organization may have message-related policies that will apply to chat. So I'm not sure if anybody's having difficulties trying to chat. Oh, I see Dan was able to add a little more information. That's great.
Okay, I think we have just about everybody except for Gloria, which I also noticed I have two of you in my who's on list. So I'm wondering if maybe you have two different devices running at the same time. We'll see if that causes you any issues. Let's go ahead and go to the next page. All right, so This is just kind of our statement on commercial tobacco products. So all references to tobacco and tobacco products within this presentation refer to the commercial tobacco and nicotine products that are not the tobacco or the plant mixtures grown or harvested and used by indigenous people for sacred purposes. So we are talking about commercial tobacco and what they're throwing out there at our kids. So for today's objectives, we'll be looking at concerning trends and products, consequences for the youth, strategies to address youth vaping, what is INDEPTH? That's kind of what we're here for today. Resources, technical assistance, and support. Moving forward, what happens after this, and a readiness assessment that we'll discuss as well. So our vision is a world free of lung disease. Our mission is to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease through research, education, and advocacy. And the American Lung Association serves all Americans through strategic imperatives. So we want to defeat lung cancer, champion clean air for all, create a tobacco-free future, improve the quality of life for those with lung disease and their families. And just a little bit before we go to the recent trends, a little bit of how we've been doing this. So in the last 30 years, we've worked with schools a fair amount in the world of asthma, right? So we've gone into schools, we've taught kids about what asthma is, what their triggers are, how to deal with those triggers, how to deal with their lung disease to empower them. Beyond that, we started working with kind of asthma-friendly schools, which is a broader approach to how schools can interact with those kids with asthma. Since then, we've moved into the tobacco space. And for the last 25 years, we've also worked with kids around tobacco. And in the last about 4 or 5 years, was when INDEPTH was developed and it was first piloted. And so now we're kind of moving into that next phase with INDEPTH, and that's what we hope to be able to talk to you a little bit about today. And I'm going to pass it over to Michelle now for some recent trends in current use.
All right. Well, thank you, Patrick. And thank you, everybody who joined us live. And for those of you who are watching this as a recorded webinar, I just want to encourage you to reach out if you have questions afterwards. You certainly can put questions in the chat. I'll rely on Patrick and or Alyssa to nudge me if something comes up while I'm presenting, as I don't have my chat feature up right now, but happy to answer questions as we go. But we do have time for Q&A at the end. For those of you that are watching this in a recorded setting, you certainly can reach out to us via email after the webinar, should you have questions and not be able to ask them live. So wanted to start off just as kind of a baseline foundational information for you. You may already be aware of some of this, but I always feel like it's good to kind of just set that foundational point for us so everybody's on the same page. So I'm sure you're all aware of the concern that we all have around youth vaping. This is the most recent data from 2023, the National Youth Tobacco Survey, which indicates that approximately 2.8 million youth currently use any tobacco product. So that's enough of a number for any of us, I think, to be alarmed. The good news is what we're finding over the last couple of years, and everybody knows that data collection the last couple of years with COVID has been a little difficult to assess. And so even looking at trends beforehand or in the middle or afterwards can look a little bit different. So, but what we are seeing just over the last year or two is that that tobacco use among high school students has actually decreased slightly from 16.5% to 12.6% in the past year. But unfortunately, we're seeing trends with our middle school in that the middle school rates have actually increased from 4.5 to 6.6%. So a little bit of a concern there. Do we know why? Not necessarily, but we know that it is an indicator that students even younger. And anecdotally, we're hearing, high school, middle school, and even elementary students, unfortunately, that are starting to use vape devices. And so obviously it's why we're here today, and why this is such an important subject for us to address. Additionally, wanted to share when it comes specifically to e-cigarettes that there are 2.1 million youth who currently use e-cigarettes, and this also was a decline slightly in high school students. So again, that's somewhat good news. But one of the concerns is that 1 in 4 of the students that indicate they're using e-cigarettes one of the 4 that are indicating that they're using them are using them daily. And we know that daily use is an indicator of nicotine dependence. So that's of utmost concern. The middle of this infographic indicates some of the more popular products that are out there. And we all recall that just a few years back, Juul used to rule. And nowadays it's Elf Bar and many of the other disposables that are out there. So I'll share a little bit more on that in a few more slides. But it's evolving and changing, and it can be difficult to keep up with the trends in a tobacco industry that is putting these products on the market regularly. It's hard to keep up with that. So but just wanted to share what some of those more popular items are. Also, we have a big concern about the flavors. 9 out of 10 teens who use an e-cigarette use a flavored e-cigarette. So it's part of the reason for us to focus so much on policy change that can address flavors, menthol use, and a number of other issues around the availability and the appeal to our youth. So also just want to mention that e-cigarettes come in many shapes and sizes. Some deliver nicotine in the format from raw tobacco. Some are synthetic nicotine. Many of the e-cigarettes include nicotine salts, and which make it less harsh for the students to use and more easy for them to adapt and start to use and continue to use. Additionally, oftentimes other drugs, including CBD or THC, marijuana, or other things are put into the devices. And so that's a concern as well. So just last week, the American Lung Association released its State of Tobacco Control report. I would encourage you to take a look at that. And while that really addresses the broader policy, and we know what is evidence-based and what works in changing tobacco use behavior, I would encourage you to just kind of take a look at what those statistics are. You can find that on our website. But I wanted to highlight again, because we're focusing on youth today, that for Arizona, the rates that we were looking at specifically compared with with national rates. In Arizona, we see that high school tobacco use is currently at 17.4%, which is down from 20.7% since last year. So basically following the same trends and as national. And middle school rates has remained steady at 2.4%. So that didn't change year over year. And then just to highlight again, I think it's interesting, and I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to watch the documentary on Juul Labs industry on Netflix, but it was fascinating to look at the timeline and just think of within the last 4 to 5 years, how much has changed in the availability of products and the type of products and everything else that's out there. So again, it's ever evolving, and important for us to keep on our toes and be diligent as we're supporting our youth who are becoming addicted. So let's take a little closer look at the products. You are all most likely aware that we do consider e-cigarettes and vaping products to be tobacco products. So therefore, under federal law, it would include any of these, as we often refer to them as electronic nicotine delivery systems, or ENDS. But there are a number of different names by which these e-cigarettes go by. I've listed several of them there, so you can take a look at that. Ultimately, when you look at an e-cigarette, they all basically have the same components. They may look a little different in shape and size, but they all do the same thing. It has a battery that operates the unit. It has an atomizer that takes the e-liquid and turns it into an aerosol. It has a cartridge that includes some kind of a container that includes or a repository for the e-juice, and then there's some kind of a mouthpiece by which they can inhale it. So basically, all very similar, even if they look different. They contain some of the same components. And just as they have evolved over the last several years, we started off with kind of a cig-alike that was an e-cigarette that looked just like a regular cigarette. And then it kind of turned the corner a little bit and looking more like devices that could be considered more youth friendly. So our second generation included things like pens, and those then started to introduce flavors. That was kind of the shift from the approach where the tobacco industry was really saying people can use these to quit using tobacco, which we know they're not really quitting; they're just shifting their addiction. But really kind of changed the corner about what their approach was in providing flavors and doing more to market to our youth and entice a whole new generation of users. So the third generation came around with more of the mods or the customizable approach. Our fourth generation, I can't believe that, again, even just in a decade, we've got all these fourth, fifth, next generation. It's pretty ridiculous, kind of like an iPhone. So the fourth generation included cartridges and products that are refillable. And the most recent kind of changes include disposables. So when you look at the more popular items, they are the disposable products that are out there. And then looking forward and beyond, it's, new devices are coming out all the time. Promotion of synthetic nicotine, which some of the companies are dubbing as tobacco free because it doesn't contain a tobacco derived nicotine. What we want to express is that nicotine is nicotine, whether it's derived chemically in a lab or whether it's derived from a tobacco product. So again, we're watching these trends and trying to stay alert to what's happening and trying to keep up with what's changing so quickly. So just some images on the left of some of the different examples of what they look like. You'll see some of them look like USB drives. Some of them look like pens. The mods are a little, thicker, chunkier. On the right-hand side, if you recall from the National Youth Tobacco Survey, these are some of the more common ones. So Elf Bar, Mr. Fogg. You do see the jewel in the upper right up there as well, and Views is the one on the top. So those are the top brands that you might see that our youth are using. I wanted to just take a moment to kind of highlight that the FDA has found a lot of marketing efforts from outside of the country where where products are being marketed clearly. When you see this marketed to our youth, these are some examples of actual, on the left-hand side, the red blocks, those are actual e-cigarettes. The ones on the right are similar toys. So when you look at any of these, a milk carton or little spaceman or little, Slurpee cup, these are clearly products that are being marketed to youth. I have a couple of other examples on the next page, looking again at those little Starbucks cups, and then even some of the toys, the little mini Yoda. Now, when you pause and think about that, these are not products that are being targeted towards adults and that most adults would use. So again, just kind of keeping our eyes on the pulse of all of that. There's an example of some of them that look like Sharpies. And then I wanted to share, if you weren't aware, on the right-hand side are just a couple of examples of some of the products that are accessories that are available that our youth can access. And even more concerning about their access is that they don't have to have age verification for some of these items. So the one on the top is meant to look like an inhaler for asthma, but it is in fact actually a vape device. The one in the middle is a hoodie where the drawstring actually has a tube that the user can can connect to their vape to. And then they even have areas that they can hide their vape within their shoe. So this industry is very stealth and coming up with new ideas and new ways to lure our youth and for youth to be able to conceal their use of some of these products as well. All right, so let's talk about some of the health consequences, although again, this audience I'm sure is quite well aware of them. We know that vaping is harmful and dangerous to kids. It's harmful and dangerous for adults as well, but we know that it causes lung damage, can lead to a lifelong nicotine addiction, and we know that it impacts brain development. Our young brains are developing until age 25, 26. And so using products like this at a younger age, really can cause a lot of harm to the developing brain. So we talked a little bit about what's in e-cigarettes earlier, to a certain extent, but looking at the e-juice that's in there is heated, and as it's heated, the aerosols, and I do want to express that it is aerosol. There's a lot of youth and other people who hear or think it's just water vapor. It's just harmless water vapor, but it's far from harmless, and it's far from being water vapor. It actually is aerosol that includes flavorings. It includes metals from the device that's being, heated up, the coils that are in there. It includes a number of different other chemicals that are released as a result of the heating of the chemicals. So lots of things to be aware of. Again, I mentioned some of the vape cartridges or pods can also be modified and filled with other types of drugs, in addition to flavors or e-juices. Oftentimes they're available in different flavors, including menthol, which suppresses the harshness or increases the desirability of youth to experiment and at least try them. So want to be aware of all of the flavorings and the impact that has on youth. So this is just another diagram of what all is included in that aerosol. Again, there's nicotine certainly in there, but the other ultrafine particles that are inhaled that include cancer-causing agents, the heavy metals, as I mentioned, and other flavorings that are not meant to be inhaled in a very, very fine, superfine mist into the lungs and can cause serious damage. Here we're looking at some of the short-term effects. Now, this is both for tobacco and e-cigarettes. Many of them I'm sure you're already aware of, but just wanted to include those things to be aware of and look for in youth use, in things that they might experience in the short term. And then here's some of the long-term effects about health effects. While we know that e-cigarettes are relatively new, there are, we have a lot that we need to learn still about the future and what that may mean for the long-term health effects with youth, but certainly it is of concern. And we know that many tobacco products, the traditional tobacco products, have led to long-term health consequences. We can anticipate that we'll see many of those same kinds of consequences for our youth who are vaping in the future. Excuse me. Also want to comment on the impact that vaping has on adolescent mental health. We know that there are linkages with anxiety symptoms and feelings of depression among youth. We know that many students who are vaping are self-medicating or are more likely to see associated, higher levels of ADHD symptoms. We're seeing the connection with longer-term use and higher depressive symptoms up to a year later. And know that compared with those who never use, a student who uses e-cigarettes is more than double the likely of having a diagnosis of depression. So we all are concerned about mental health issues with our youth, but in particular, there's kind of a co-synergy there with our youth who are vaping. So at this point, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about why we're here and what we're doing to support you as strategies to be able to address the youth vaping. So I wanted to start off with this kind of information from the National Education Association that found that 11 million plus learning days are lost due to out of school suspension. So oftentimes we have administrators or school staff that are not sure what to do with students when they catch them vaping. And so their response is, well, we'll just suspend them. And we know that for many of those students, that's exactly where they want to be. So we want to look for what are alternatives and being able to provide resources to provide an intervention. It's an opportunity if a student gets caught to have to provide a little bit of a wake-up call. Maybe there's the opportunity for them to understand a little bit more about nicotine and the harms that it causes, understand a little bit more about what nicotine dependence is, and even recognize that maybe they are in fact addicted. As well as looking at the opportunities to explore what a healthier lifestyle looks like. And that includes things not just around nicotine, but around communication skills and mental health awareness and other components. So it's really important for us to offer an opportunity for a student who is vaping or using tobacco to really kind of address that and give pause to think about it. So if we can provide that intervention, we can provide some education and build some of those skills, they'll be in a more successful place in their future. So this diagram is just what we use to kind of really show for the Lung Association our comprehensive approach to addressing the youth vaping epidemic. It builds on kind of on tiers, starting with youth empowerment. And I know in Arizona, we've got Arizona Stand, which is a great way to engage our youth that want to participate in tobacco control efforts at the local level. For the Lung Association, we provide education and resource materials for healthcare professionals as well as parents in our kind of next tier. And what I want to focus on today is a little bit more on the policy change piece related to tobacco-free school policies. We're not going to touch so much on prevention, although I'll mention a couple of resources that are available if folks want to explore that on their own. And then again, why we're here today is to address the intervention piece and in depth. All that to say, at the top of our pyramid is our cessation tier. And we want to make sure that if we're offering an intervention like INDEPTH, it's very important that students have or are aware of resources that are available to help them quit when they're ready. So wanted to make sure that we at least included some information on that. So let's start with our Vape Free Schools Initiative policy piece. The Lung Association offers about a 15-minute training online. I say it's a training, but really it is just a kind of a review of an assessment tool that schools, that can be school administrators, faculty, parents, anybody can go through and take a look at their school policies and find out, are they comprehensive enough? What are we doing for enforcement? What other information should we be aware of? What should be included in our code of conduct? What happens on the first infraction of a policy? What happens on a second infraction? There's no right or wrong place for them to be. It's just an opportunity to really kind of look at what exists and what the gaps are and what they can address. So this is one of the resources that as we're offering technical assistance, we'll kind of lean on this to support and really kind of identify, identify how schools can support having a successful policy implementation, but also what happens when there is an infraction and how they can address that. So by setting the stage with having a policy at the base, you're leading into having more successful implementation of a program like INDEPTH or cessation programs down the road. All right, so INDEPTH, if you are not familiar with it, is our intervention for nicotine dependence, education, prevention, tobacco, and health. It's a mouthful, that's why we refer to it as INDEPTH, but I think the name does adequately kind of describe what the intention of the program is. It is meant to be an intervention. It's meant to be an alternative to suspension for students who have violated school or tobacco policies, or even within the community. It's designed for youth in a school or community setting. It has been written for a middle school level or a high school level. And while it's been written for that age range and it's been evaluated for that age range, we do often get people who say, what do I do if I've got somebody in fourth grade or fifth grade? Can I not use this program? And I would say to them, they can use the program, but may need to make some modifications. As a certified tobacco treatment specialist myself, I recognize that if a student is using and potentially addicted, we don't want to wait a few more years to provide that intervention. So with some modifications, the program can be used and can support students um, who need the help. But I do want to say that INDEPTH is intended for people who are using tobacco products or vaping, but it does include all types of tobacco products. So it's not just vaping, because we know that many students who use a vaping device also start to use other products, or maybe use more than one product at the same time, or polyuse. So it's intended for those who are using it, not intended as a prevention piece for general health education classes. As the students progress through the program, it addresses how can I make changes to my personal life. And if somebody is not already using it, they're not looking to make those changes. So it really does address a tobacco or an individual who uses vaping devices. What we have found in the evaluation over the last several years is that about 60% of the students who participate in the program indicate, at least 60%, indicate that they're willing to quit e-cigarettes after completing the program. So the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We're using this approach to kind of make that horse thirsty. We want to just encourage them to give thought to it. And oftentimes when they're caught, it's a prime time for that type of intervention to really help students become aware. Again, I mentioned before, it's for middle school or high school students. It's attendance is anticipated or expected to be mandatory for youth in order to fulfill the obligation for the code or the policy infraction. We do leave some flexibility for the schools to decide how the program is implemented. I'll get into that a little bit later, and we'll be able to share more detail with that as we offer technical assistance calls to kind of figure out, how is this going to work best in my school? There's flexibility with how you offer it. Basically, the program includes 4 sessions. They are approximately 50 minutes each. Generally, they are facilitated by an adult facilitator who is trained, and I'll get into that in a moment. It can be held in a group setting, but we've had some success and had some facilitators that conduct the program just one-on-one. For those who, especially back in COVID, the program was offered virtually, but it can also be offered in person. And now I'm very excited to talk about, we just launched our new INDEPTH Online, which takes the same program, same content, but it allows the students to go through the program relatively self-paced on their own. So rather than being facilitated by an adult who has to be in the room and work with a group of students, immediately upon the infraction, a facilitator or an adult at the school can refer a student into the program and say, I want you to take this in-depth online program, and within a week or 2 weeks or whatever the school designates, I need you to complete this program and provide me with a copy of your certificate of completion. That would indicate that they have successfully completed it. The program contains the same information as the in-person group program does, but they can go through it at their own, kind of at their own pace. A facilitator or adult who refers them into the program, there are coaching tips and techniques and support messages that the facilitator can use. So it's not just a pass the student off to this online program and don't worry about it anymore. There is a dashboard for the facilitator to monitor the student's progress, see where they are in the program, and what help they might need. So at the end of each session, the students are asked what their motivation to quit is at that particular moment, again, in all 4 sessions. And then also, what did you learn in this session that surprised you? And those can be used as talking points, as well as we have an outline for facilitators to give some coaching prompts. What did what surprised you about the different types of tobacco products? What's one thing that you didn't know about? So it gives the facilitator prompts to engage, verify that students are actively participating in the program and not just clicking through. I will add that the online version, the students do have to complete a knowledge check. They must score at least 80% or higher in order to advance to the next section. They're given multiple times, so we want them to be successful, but they do have to click on every section. So they can't just fast forward through the whole thing. They do have to actively participate. And as I mentioned, both for the in-person program and the online program, they are offered a certificate of completion. So if they need to provide that as proof that they have participated in this program successfully as a result of their infraction of the policy, and they need to show that to be resolved of their instead of doing the suspension, then they can use something like that. With the online program, it takes approximately 2 to 3 hours to complete, but it can be done, again, determined by the school. Does it make sense for them to do it in an in-school suspension situation where they're monitored by a facilitator who can touch base with them and complete it in 2 to 3 hours? Could be, but we may get some survey fatigue. That's a lot of time, and they can complete it right on their cell phone. But we encourage people to do it over a span of a week or two so that they have some time to digest and really give consideration to the different components. I mentioned that it is the content is the same as the in-person program. With the online version, we've added some additional mental health components that in the future we'll be modifying the in-person program to include those as well. So this is the content that's included within the curriculum. The first part of it is getting the facts, and it's really understanding all of the different types of tobacco products and what's in it and what harms are caused by that. The second session is really understanding nicotine dependence and recognizing if they might potentially be addicted, and then more importantly, what they can do about it. Session 3 really focuses on healthier lifestyles and how what alternatives there are to tobacco product use, and kind of plants the seeds of what they can do for stress management or other activities to be and have a healthier future. And then session 4 kind of wraps things up with looking at the past and looking where they are currently and what the future might hold, as well as recognizing when I'm ready to quit, what resources are available for me to utilize. And so it's important for our facilitators, again, not to just hand them off for a student to participate in the program, but to say, when you're ready to quit, we're here to help. And here's what we have available locally. Here's what the Lung Association offers. Here's what our Quit line offers. Here's a local clinic that you can go to get assistance. So we really encourage our facilitators and our referrers to know what resources are that are available. Again, the adage of the horse, get the horse thirsty. When they're ready to drink, they better have a trough available so they know where to find what they need. So to implement the in-depth program, we do ask that at least one person from the person that is implementing or conducting the program in person would be required to do the adult facilitator training. If there is a referral process for the online, we need at least one person within the school building that is trained in the in-depth program, the in-depth facilitator training, so that they understand the nuances, the whys and the wheres of the program and what they need to have in place. So the training, the great part about the facilitator training is that, number one, it's free. It's available online. It's self-paced in that you can start it and go through, the first 10 minutes. And then if you get interrupted, you can stop and it'll remember where you are. And next time you can log back in and finish it. Adults who go through this training receive a facilitator guide. They do receive a certificate of completion. It is a 3-year certification for them to be certified as a facilitator, and they can renew that anytime after that 3 years for free as well. And there are a slew of additional resources that are available that are supplements to the program. Many of those resources are available in the online format as well that they can download or can print and review. I want to share just a little bit about the metrics that we look at in the success of the program. We do collect some demographic information so that we can get an assessment of, what types of products the students are using, how much they're using, helping them to understand the role that tobacco plays in their life. What other influences are there? Do they consider themselves nicotine dependent? How much do they spend on their tobacco use? And then what's their motivation to reduce? At the beginning of the program, online, we can measure it actually at each session. And then what does it look like at the end of the program? We ask about quit attempts. Have you tried in the past? Are you willing to try in the future? And then if you're willing to try in the future, what does your motivation look like? What does your confidence in that look like? And then also, are you aware of what resources are available to quit? So you'll notice we don't look at, did the student quit at the end of the program? We would love it if they did, but that's not the true intent of this. It's an intervention to lead them to be able to take the steps to quit when they're ready. And again, there's our benchmark of we have found that at least 60% of the students indicate that they want to quit, in some cases higher than that. These are just some of the resources, excuse me, that we make available for facilitators. Now, INDEPTH, when we're talking about kind of a marketing piece, is really focused on the adults who would facilitate it or referring students into the program. It's not really about recruiting students per se, because it is meant to be an alternative to suspension and a referral-based program. But there are some one-pagers, postcards, rack cards, and information that's available both for online and for the in-person program. And we will make sure that our schools that we're working with have those resources readily available, either to print or to be able to use. There is an evaluation protocol. So we do, for the in-person program, have a pre and a post assessment that's done of the students. Again, that's where we collect some of the demographic data, but also understand what some of the changes are from the beginning of the program to the end. We ask similar questions of our facilitators as well. We do ask for the number of students who enroll, the number of students who complete, where those programs are offered, and then a little bit about, what worked well, what didn't work well. Those are some of the kinds of questions that we ask our facilitators as part of their post program. We do have some a history of annual evaluations, so we are happy to share, as well as some of the pilot outcomes. So I wanted to take a moment here to just kind of summarize and go through the who, what, where. So who can do the program? It can be a school partner. It can be a community partner. It could be, anybody within the school. It could be a coach. It could be an administrator. It could be the school counselor. It could be the school nurse. It could be a community partner. It could be a healthcare system or a health department. And they could be, the students could be referred out to that location, or that community partner, with permission of the school, can come into the school and offer the program if that makes sense and works and is agreeable for all parties. So it's flexible in who can administer it. As far as, who can refer, that can be, parents wanting a student to go through the program. Even if they don't get caught at school, they certainly can attend if they, if they wish for their student to get some assistance. So the what resources are needed? We've got, again, some printed materials, curricula guides. We've got posters and information that can be shared with parents, with community partners, and support for what's in the student code of conduct, all of those things. What also is needed is some dollars to support that, and we have some opportunities to provide some stipends and resources for those that are implementing, and we would go through that with those of you that are receiving the technical assistance and support, what that looks like based on the needs that you have there. The how, again, two options: the one-on-one or in a group program, and then also with online. So there's lots of different opportunities. And then also the how part is really the looking at making sure that you have sound policy in place and what we can do to support you in those efforts. And the why, of course, is to protect our youth. That's one of the most important things. I've I put this up in our presentation, and I'm aware of the time here. I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for some questions and answers. But this is our guidance document for vape detectors. And as we're providing technical assistance, if schools want to discuss the whys or why nots of vape detectors, happy to go into that in more detail. Wanted to share just a smattering of some of the resources that are available, not just from the Lung Association, but from some of our partner agencies that can support efforts. We also have another online training called ACT to address youth tobacco cessation. And so this can be a good resource to share with people who say, I want to help, I just don't know where to start. What can I do to support a youth that I suspect is using? And so this can be a great training, free, available at Lung Vet Training as well. We have an abundance of different lung health, different toolkits that are available focused on health equity. So looking at Hispanic and Latina communities, in the Black community, and shortly in the next month or so, we will have a toolkit specifically for youth. So very excited, and we will be sharing that out with our participants as well. And then this is just a summary of all those programs that we have out there. And so now you might want to know, what are the next steps? So today we're starting off with kind of a kickoff orientation, helping you understand a little bit more about the program. So we will be offering an additional educational webinar coming up at the end of February and another one at the end of March. And then we will also be offering technical assistance calls, at least 2, to the schools that we've identified that are interested and ready to move forward for implementation, but maybe feel like they need a little more support. If you have heard this information today and you are ready to roll with it, that is great. And we're happy to support you along the way. But we do recognize that sometimes policy change and implementing programs like this takes some support and takes some additional effort. So we want to make sure that that's available for you. And that's what we're offering through those guided discussions with the one-on-one calls for technical assistance. So what we're offering with our technical assistance is working with you. I've got a survey coming up that will kind of give us a needs assessment about what do you need to be able to implement the program successfully, or what other resources do you need? And then we will identify at least 6 schools that we will offer some additional individualized TA calls. I mentioned the educational webinars. At this point, it'll most likely be on best practices and implementation, on future implementation and sustainability. But if we hear back from schools that they say, I really need to hear more about whatever that is, our intention is to listen to what the schools need and respond based on those needs. And of course, we'll support with any policy guidance or policy review. And through the funding through ADHS, thank you, Yvette, we are able to offer some additional financial support with incentives, printing, program materials, those kinds of things, stipends for facilitators as well. So this next page has a link, a QR code, which I'd encourage you to take a quick snap. I'm otherwise happy to see if I can put in the chat a link, and we will send this as part of our follow-up.
I just put it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right. I was going to do that too, but I'm glad you beat me to it. That's awesome, Patrick. Thanks. So this will allow us to kind of review and determine what types of support you need, what kind of the status is. There's no right or wrong answers. We just want to be able to support you where you are. So this is our kind of pre-survey, so we can learn how we can best provide guidance and support to you. So I'll stop there and see if there are questions. I don't think there's been anything in the chat as I'm looking through. And rather than leave this one up, what I will do is put up our team contact information. So your technical assistance team, Patrick has been hard at work reaching out to folks and letting them know about the programs and resources and recruiting them for participating in the webinars and learning more about INDEPTH. Alyssa and I will be supporting some of those technical assistance calls, and Patrick will be providing some communication support as well. And then we have, I still like to call her our wizard behind the curtain. We have Stacy supporting the work that we're doing as well. So our team is here for you to support you in any way that you might possibly need us. Are there any questions? You can just, we're a small enough group. I think you can come off mute and give a holler. If you're feeling a little shy, you can just put it in the chat. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'm just going to ask if anybody, does the team or the vet have anything you want to add or any additional guidance, direction, questions, anything else before we wrap up?
Hi, Michelle. No
Hi,
questions at this time.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Thank you all for taking the time for the presentation, and we look forward to the work.
Absolutely. And we will be sharing links to this as well as the survey for those who, want to learn more and were unable to participate today. And then happy to meet with folks as they're ready as well. So thank you all very much for your time today. We'll wrap up. I'll stay on just for a couple extra minutes if anybody does have individual questions, but otherwise, thank you very much for your time. And we very much look forward to working with you. Thanks, everyone. All right, it's just us three. We can stop recording, I think.